And welcome to Mixed Media Live. We're here, and we're maybe not as strong as ever because Nathan is out today, so you can see that big fat absent sign. But we're here to talk about our normal topics, our topics in film and music, as it were. And we're usually three people who love talking about art, whether it's contentious things, philosophical things, or really anything at all with regards to our respective art forms, our respective interests. And we're here every Friday at 7 p.m. live. And the great thing about being a live podcast is if you join us live here at 7 p.m., you get to be part of the conversation. So if you chat, if you comment or do anything like that, you can be part of our conversation. We're a small crew over here, so you'll definitely be featured. So yeah, don't be afraid to chat or comment or anything like that. So Ben, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
And I'm Irving. I'm a filmmaker, and I own a production company, media company in general, called Ariella. Site dropping soon, ariella.co.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's difficult making a website on your own from scratch, and I've learned that it's not my favorite activity for sure.
Yeah, I've kind of put that off. I don't know exactly how useful that is anyway for me. I mean, a lot of musicians have them, but I don't know how useful it is.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to make an online store for some of the media products that I offer, and I've got little divisions inside of it. One's like Ariella Media, and that's what I finished, and that's basically a whole site on its own. And it's I'm just glad it's almost done. It's almost over. Yeah. What's been going on in your neck of the woods?
What have I been up to? I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of kind of looking at chord progressions from middle of the 60s the Beatles, especially paying attention to the major 4 minor 4 1 progression, which is really cool. Very useful. I think it's useful progression.
Cool. Yeah. Is that a progression that appears often, or that are you writing right now? Are you writing anything right now, or
I'm doing a little bit of some stuff with some of my brother and his friends. Just a kind of improv-ish song that we're not really improvising, but putting that together. But yeah, I don't know that I really like minor 4 1, and I guess Paul McCartney, that's kind of the distinctive sound of a lot of their best songs, or at least what I think are their best songs, especially from Rubber Soul. And Paul McCartney actually said that he thought the natural thing to do, instead of going from major 4 1, which is this normal cadence, thought that going major 4 minor 4 1 is the natural thing to do for him.
Interesting. Yeah, it's what his fingers want to do on the keys, maybe.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Before we get into our topics, we have 2 awesome, cool topics today. Before we get into them, I want to mention that if you want to support us at all, you can do that for free by joining our locals community. That's mixedmedia.locals.com. And there, if you join, the first maybe, let's say 5 people who join are going to get whiteboard access. Do you see that whiteboard am I going to point to it right? No. There it is. The whiteboard over there on that side of the screen, that is a live whiteboard. You can draw on that right now if you want to. All you have to do is, ask for it in the chat or join our locals community, and we'll give you access to it. And it's a limited time thing. So, join. Yeah, so Ben, you can take it away with your topic.
Okay, so I ultimately want to get to the use of themes in Little Mermaid, which I know I've talked about several times before on this show. It's one of my favorite film scores. one of my favorite films in general, just something that had a huge impact on my childhood. But before we get there, I kind of want to like talk a little bit about themes in general and like what themes in film have kind of come from and what they tend to do. So that kind of involves going back to the pre-film music, looking at a little bit at Wagner, a classical opera, mainly opera composer. I think it's also a good thing to do because I know I've talked a lot about themes, like even going back to our very first episode, I was talking about Luke and Leia's theme. And for some audience members who might not be familiar with that term, probably a good idea that I, clarify a little bit about what that means in case you don't know.
Yeah. So what's a theme?
Yeah. So a theme, like in general, when we're talking about music, we can define a theme as a recognizable musical melodic unit. It tends to be something that's repeated. So that's pretty broad definition. The kind of use that we're thinking of really doesn't necessarily start with Wagner, but Wagner is sort of he sort of brings the use of themes attached to like characters and ideas to its maturity. So Wagner writes a lot of operas, wrote a lot of operas in kind of the mid 19th century. Very, very influential composer, kind of a contentious or contested figure, I suppose, these days with his, German white superiority and kind of anti-Jewish attitudes. So
yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, I mean, his I want to say his I want a son, I think. Hitler's children called him like their uncle. He's kind of very closely associated with the Nazis, so even though he predated them, so not necessarily the greatest personal figure in musical history, but a very influential composer. And so what he does with his themes in his operas, particularly you can see this in his massive set of 4 operas called the Ring Cycle, which is like Norse mythology in one fell swoop in like one 17-hour go. You're supposed to listen to it, in a row. So it's like 17 hours of opera. So what he does there especially, but just in general with his themes, is that so he has these musical melodic units, and they are attached to particular characters or places or ideas. And in general, when we hear the theme, it matches, like let's say a particular character has a theme. Normally when the character appears on screen, on stage, we hear the theme, or like the sword has a theme, when the sword is used, it has a name, but whatever the name of the sword is, when the sword appears, we get the sword theme. And that's something that's pretty easy for us to like generally to identify. I think most listeners can pick that out, and there are lots of examples that you can probably think of off the top of your head from films. John Williams is a master of themes, like Darth Vader's theme, right? Darth Vader appears, we hear Darth Vader's music, that sort of thing. The Force theme, right? When the Force is being used, or there's something kind of epic and mysterious going on, we hear the Force theme. So that's sort of what Wagner is doing, and is kind of bequeathed to future composers. And so there's some things to note about that. I spent a lot of time in high school studying Wagner. I was kind of obsessed with his music. I wrote a 60-page high school senior thesis about leitmotifs and their development. So one thing to note is that generally these composers don't label their themes. So we later can look back and say, well, every time the sword comes out, or every time the ring comes out, this music plays. So it has to be associated with that. But nowhere does like Wagner or do most composers after him say like, oh, this is the ring theme, like in their notes, or this is the sword theme. It just kind of happens that way. So it's hard to know like what the intention of the composer is. I think as time has gone on, people are a little more open about that. But Wagner, there's been a lot of people kind of fanatically devoted to understanding his themes, because what he does with his themes is not just the obvious like, oh, every time the sword comes out we get the sword theme. We get some of that, but mostly what's happening and that people are interested in is how the themes change. For static objects like the sword and the ring, they don't change that much, but for particular characters or settings or emotions, they do change. And there's a whole industry sort of into figuring this out, kind of decoding these things. There's a fantastic book. You do not have to like believe a word that Derek Cook says. I spent a lot of time on this in high school reading Derek Cook's book called I Saw the World End.
Who the heck is Derek Cook or whatever his name is?
Yeah, so he's a fascinating musicologist who is interested in Wagner's leitmotifs. And he, has a catalog of all of Wagner's leitmotifs, and then wants to say, goes through every interval, like a unison, like one note, same note, right? One note, second higher, note major third higher, right? And he wants to catalog what the psychological connotations of each interval are. And then he goes through and looks at a given leitmotif or motif. Wagner's calls them leitmotifs, or like leading. They're supposed to lead you to understand things. We can call them a theme or leitmotif. So he looks at a particular theme from the ring cycle and says, well, here X happens. The instruments are X, Y, and Z, and the interval changes slightly. And what does that mean? It's an enormous undertaking. It's a fascinating book to read, even if you don't agree with it. I don't agree with it very much, but it's really fascinating. And there are some insights of his that, again, you don't have to believe like literally that these intervals have a like one-to-one psychological connotation. But like a really interesting example that I spent a lot of time in high school writing about, the main family, like the Wotan, or kind of like Odin, I suppose. He comes to the earth and has these two children, and then they both marry each other and have a child. Okay, so this family of like quasi demigods are called like the Volsungs. And there's a motif that kind of runs through the appearance of the family. And we get it like when the brother and sister meet each other and become husband and wife, and then they die in childbirth. And the son, Siegfried, he learns about his parents and he wants to see them, and he feels abandoned. Okay, so we get that theme there. And the theme itself is a nice, pretty little theme. But like in its original statement, the main interval kind of rises up a major sixth. Okay. And then when we get to like it in sadder context, we get like a minor sixth. So instead of like C to A, it's C to A flat. And then later, in even more grim context, we have C to F sharp, which is a tritone. Okay. And so again, you don't have to necessarily believe like, well, rising a major sixth means I don't remember exactly what Derek Hook says it means, and a minor sixth means something like I think he says it's like positive love for the major sixth and tragic love for the minor sixth.
That's very specific. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to necessarily buy that, but it is interesting that Wagner is definitely like consciously trying to do different things, and it does match the scene to some extent. And you can see that literal thing in play in Star Wars too. Just as an aside, the main interval, ascending interval in Han and Leia's theme is the major sixth, and then we basically get a very similar theme with a minor sixth for Anakin and Padme,
Interesting.
which
Yeah.
does actually fit.
It does fit.
Positive love and tragic love. So maybe it's not like wrong 100% of the time, but it doesn't mean it's right 100% of the time to say those things. But there, it's well, an interesting coincidence, we'll say. So that's Wagner. He has themes associated with characters and places and objects, and they tend to change to reflect growth in the character, often in ways that are not so explicit otherwise, I guess. So that sort of leads us to Hollywood, and the reason why he had such an impact on the sorts of themes that are being written in Hollywood, or the fact that Hollywood wanted to use a lot of themes in its music, is because, as I mentioned last two episodes ago when I was talking about the Golden Age, these people who are coming over, like Korngold and Steiner, are the kind of they're the generation after Wagner of German opera composers. So Wagner is enormously influential to them. Steiner actually said something like, "Well, you think I'm a good film composer, but it's too bad Wagner is dead, because if Wagner were alive, he'd be the greatest film composer, and by an enormous margin."
I love how in that he doesn't deny that he is currently, though, the greatest composer alive. Very humble.
Yeah. I guess that gives you some insight into his evaluation of himself.
Right.
But again, that just shows you that the kind of writing that Wagner was doing with his themes matching characters and reappearing. That's how it made its way into Hollywood. It's a good way, like if you can identify a theme, like I've said of all these Star Wars examples, if you can identify a theme as a listener, it's pretty obvious how it works and affects the story. Pretty easy to latch onto. I mean, there are lots of themes in Star Wars, or other Williams films that you probably don't pay any attention to, or don't know that they're happening. But like when you get a big one that you can latch onto, it's pretty obvious how it works in the story. I guess just a note about what themes since then in film tended to be before we kind of get into The Little Mermaid, which doesn't do things that a lot of films do. So we've already mentioned Williams, and Williams is kind of more in that classical Wagnerian tradition. And people are also very interested in cataloging all of his themes, especially for Star Wars. I think this guy's name is Frank Lerman. You can probably look that up. He has online 120-page catalog of all of the themes of Star Wars and how they're used. So that's, people do the same sort of thing with Wagner. They're and Williams, trying to figure out like the thematic language.
That's all without sheet music, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
That's
great.
Yeah,
you can look at the sheet music for all the big themes, like Darth Vader's theme, but
all the little tiny things.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some really fascinating stuff in Williams, especially in like the expansive world of Star Wars. Leaving out the sequel trilogy, because I think in the sequel trilogy, every theme that shows up, it just feels forced. You really get the sense that John Williams is told, well, you need to put the Force theme here because we think that the audience will expect the Force theme to be here. And that's how you make your money, is putting the Force theme in there as many times as you can.
Of course.
I mean, that's all people want out of Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that too, by the way, that it's excessively in the new films.
Oh yeah, it's I want to say I think this guy Frank Lerman has calculate like the ratio of the use of the Force theme in like the prequels and the sequels, and it's got to be something ridiculous like 5-1 or something like that.
That is pretty ridiculous. Side note, though, that I think the same thing happens with his Harry Potter theme too. And now that I think about it, I don't know which theme it actually is, but whatever's the main theme gets played way more.
Hedwig's theme.
Yeah, definitely gets paid more later on.
That's right. And what's interesting about that is that's the only theme that survives. So Williams does the first 3 Harry Potter films, and the first 2 are definitely a unit. They have really consistent themes like Star Wars. They develop slightly. The third film, he gets a new director. I don't remember who directs the third film, and there's like a pretty clean break in the music. It's a totally different musical sound. Only the main theme, Hedwig's theme, is reappears. And then after that, I think it's Patrick Doyle who does the fourth film, and then it's a bunch of other people who do the other ones. And there's like no continuity other than Hedwig's theme. Well, that's all you need to know, which is kind of sad because like there's already in the first 2 films, there's like build up of themes surrounding like Harry and his parents and his mother, and none of that comes back when these things actually would make an emotional impact if they did come back.
Of course not.
I would say generally, though, with Williams themes, they don't change. Like the orchestration, like what instruments play them, that might change, but that it's not like, well, here it's a major sixth and here it's a minor sixth, like of the same theme. Like I noted that like the Padme and Anakin and Han and Leia, major and minor sixth, but they're 2 different themes, so they're not really developments of each other. So generally they don't change to like the notes themselves. Relationships between the notes themselves don't change to indicate anything. They do often, like the orchestration changes, but it's mostly to reflect, I would say, emotions, but not to like clue us into things that aren't readily apparent anyway. I would say, other than Williams, who's kind of carrying on that tradition, what themes tend to be in films today, either are just non-existent because people think that's too obvious and too manipulative and they'll look silly if who wants a theme, or they're really static. It's just like, well, character X on screen, theme, oh, he's on screen again, same theme, doesn't grow with the character. It's more like a kind of a token, like the Force theme being everywhere in the sequel trilogy. It's kind of a token, like it's supposed to be there because it doesn't really add anything. Obviously, that's a really general statement. There are lots of films that don't do that, but I would say that for the most part, even films that are very good, that have themes, tend to just have really static themes. They can be great scores, but the themes themselves are pretty static. Okay, so that gets us to The Little Mermaid, and I don't want to go too long here. But
they're all good. This is very interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. I've given the Little Mermaid talk a couple of times to various people. It gets different reactions from people whether you like the film or not. But I think it's a lot of fun to talk about because Alan Menken, the composer, does some really cool things. Like I said, Little Mermaid is one of my favorite scores of all time. There's so many wonderful things in it, but just looking at themes in it. So there are lots of themes. This is not just like, well, the main character and like the antagonist get a theme and then they're going to remain static. there are lots of themes in there, lots of minor characters getting themes, lots of emotions that are kind of hard to pin down what they are, but lots of things like that getting themes. Really, though, they don't tend to rise up out of like, into your consciousness that much, unless you're like really listening to the score. But they're there. They're part of the whole fabric of the film. They all tend to be really long melodic lines, so you can have themes that are very short, 2 or 3 notes. And these are very melodic themes, I would say. And what they often are, so this kind of gets into like a little bit of my theory of music and musical expression. I like to think of music as I call it a gestural language, where the motion is kind of suggesting things, even if it's not like it's a language that's not like a precise language. So like rising things tend to have like yearning or aspiration, So obviously I'm kind of still playing with that whole Derek Cook model. I don't want to like assign a particular like meaning to every time there's a perfect fifth or something. But I do think that a lot of the meaning in a musical line comes from the kind of motion you get from it. It's a kind of like a up and down kind of swaying thing, whatever. So the composer, Alan Menken, he really, his themes tend to follow that. They're very gestural. Wagner is like that too. Williams is often like that. Like you can just imagine, for instance, like the gesture of Darth Vader's theme, that kind of heavy, like plodding march,
Definitely.
that's a gesture as well. It's kind of stationary, heavy, militaristic
Marching.
So it matches Vader and the Empire, or like Luke's theme. Well, originally the main theme of Star Wars that's in the first film. Williams thinks of that as Luke's theme. It just tends to become the general like adventure Star Wars theme, but in the first film, it's really Luke's theme, and that heroic, perfect fifth, right? It sounds like heroic and boyish and adventurous. It's there for the hero's journey. So that's again like a good example of a gesture. That's something I would say tends to be missing also in a lot of contemporary themes. They're just kind of like, well, it's a melody. It has like, what is it actually? What if its gestures actually have to do with what they're connected to? Nothing. Generally, again, it's a really broad statement, but probably, feel free, anyone in the audience, to like say that, Ben, you're crazy. Here, like 50 examples that are go against what you just said, because there probably are, but that's my general analysis of film music. Yeah, so we got a lot of themes in Little Mermaid that like match characters' motion. Like Scuttle, the seagull, his theme is very much like kind of a fluttering little theme. I can't really, I can't hum it. I'm not gonna try and risk some copyright problems by playing it, but yeah, it's kind of like fluttering bird, and he's also kind of like a bird-brained, so to speak, bird. So we get that kind of flighty little, distracted bird. Or the I cannot think of their names, but the 2 sea eels, I guess, who are I think Flotsam and Jetsam are the 2 pet eels of Ursula. Their theme is a very slimy, kind of slithering. It's hard, here I am putting like adjectives to the music, but I mean, if you listen to it, we get all these like kind of glissandos, clarinets kind of swaying back and forth. It sounds like a kind of slippery snake eel kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of matching that sort of thing. The most interesting theme, though, is we're going to combine looking at Ariel's theme and Prince Eric's theme, obviously our protagonists. So we get Ariel's theme right off the bat, and well, the film starts with like sailors on Eric's ship singing, but okay, they sing a sea chanty, and then we get the kind of the main titles, and right off the bat there, the main titles, we get Ariel's theme. Okay, so Ariel's theme itself is kind of derived from Ariel's voice.
Interesting.
Which, yeah, so Ariel's voice is kind of like the central like prize of this film and to all the characters, right?
Do you mean her singing voice or her?
Yeah, her singing voice.
Yeah.
Right, we're told that from the very beginning, right? We start with she's supposed to sing at her 16th birthday in front of the whole undersea court, and she doesn't show up. But we're told there that she has a most beautiful voice out of all of her sisters, and it's wasted.
Quick question out of curiosity, because I don't fully remember the film. But is it based off of something like a fairy tale or like anything, or is it an original story?
It's very loosely based off of a kind of Germanic, like I think the Brothers Grimm have a really dark version of it, with involves suicide and such.
I'm sure she's some crazy siren or something like that. Like
no, but I think she commits suicide at the end.
Oh, okay.
Because the opposite happens. Like I think because she doesn't have her voice, like the prince initially goes with her, and then he like meets another girl who's like not just a regular human, and he like leaves her for this, and so she commits suicide or something. Like her blood like drains into the sea or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So making it a much kid friendlier version, but it is an old fairy tale. Yeah. So her voice is obviously very important. That is an element of the original fairy tale, that she has to give up her voice in exchange for becoming human. So Ursula captures her voice, and there's a whole exchange there about, well, if I can't speak, if I don't have a voice, how am I going to like attract this guy? How's he going to pay any attention to me? And Ursula then uses that to like pretend to be Ariel. She steals Ariel's voice, and okay. So spoilers for the film in case you haven't seen Little Mermaid, but I'm going to assume you've seen Little Mermaid.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So basically the only times we get to hear her sing, so when she sings to give her voice away, and then when Ursula uses her voice. So that's this theme that she does when she sings away her voice. It's just kind of a spirally, gently ascending theme. Kind of right, 3 notes, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, that kind of thing. Okay, so kind of gently spiraling, ascending theme. That's a nice theme. We can kind of understand, if you think of it as a gesture, kind of, aspirational, something like above the sea. You don't have to think of it that way, but it just has that sense of like yearning, I would say. Okay, so Ariel's theme itself, though, is essentially built off of her voice, the theme that's her voice. We kind of take the same 3-note gesture, and instead of just like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, we kind of go like 1, 2, 3, and we kind of spiral, up and down around those notes, and then eventually rise up to 4. So like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. Okay, so kind of spiraling around with her theme, which is already kind of spirally, but less so. So, and we're covering a 4th, which is also notable. I'm not going to pretend I know what like associations a 4th is, perfect fourth, but it relates to Eric, to Prince Eric. So Prince Eric's theme is also sort of a 3-note theme that rises a fourth, and but instead of, we kind of go like essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like, well, music kind of works like one instead of going to 0, it's like goes down to 7, so it goes down to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 1, 2, 3. So it's kind of like the opposite of Ariel's theme, but still covering the same musical like distance from note 1 to the highest note, lowest note to highest note. And his theme, it has maybe a little more heroic potential, and it gets used to more heroic effect later in the film when he kills Ursula. But it also has this kind of empty character when it has the right orchestration, when it's not like with heroic brass and whatever. It also has kind of this like ascending, then kind of falling back down and trying to go back up. That's sort of a gesture that I associate with it. And that is, again, a diegetic music. So Ariel's theme related to diegetic music when she literally sings. It's okay, her voice. And Eric actually plays his theme. He pulls out a recorder-ish instrument. I think it's literally played on a recorder in the film, and he plays it.
Oh wow.
So these themes are both diegetic and non-diegetic, which is interesting. Normally we don't get that kind of crossover in films. Occasionally you do, like in Solo, a Star Wars story, when Han Solo sees that like the recruitment ad for joining the Empire and becoming like a Imperial pilot. There's the ad actually uses Darth Vader's theme in a major key, so he kind of makes it Darth Vader's theme like an actual piece of music in the Star Wars world. But that's not John Williams. But anyway, right. So that's not very common that we get themes that are diegetic and also non-diegetic.
Now, for those who don't know, what does diegetic mean?
So diegetic is music that literally occurs in the world of the film, like the characters themselves can hear it.
Like in OFL, in the short film that we did together, there's at the end of the film, the kids are literally playing a tune as they are torturing their captives. And that's sort of like a place where there's crossover. Yeah, exactly. So both Ariel and Prince Eric's theme, they're diegetic, that also are work in non-diegetic ways, and then just the general background score. What's really cool about this is that kind of, well, the heart of the film is the song "Part of Your World," which, again, I'll assume that everyone has seen the film and knows the song at least somewhat. That song I remember.
Yeah, if not, like, just go home and listen to it, or stop. If you're watching this after, not live, stop right now, put it on, and listen to it. So what's really cool about this is that Ariel has not yet met Prince Eric, and what she sings is literally, she starts with Eric's theme. It's not like presented, it's kind of broken up a little bit, right? When she says, "I want to be where the people are," right? Okay, or that's next line. Sorry, when she says, like, "Look at this stuff, isn't it neat? When did you think my collection is complete?" Okay, so that's literally Eric's theme, Prince Eric's theme, broken up. Then when she starts getting to, so that's, interestingly enough, of course, that's when she's talking about, like, now here's what I have, but I want more, right? She's literally pointing to the land, right? She has what, she's collected all the stuff from the land already. She's got all the stuff from shipwrecks and stuff, but she wants even more. She wants to literally be with the humans, and she's singing Eric's theme without having met him. Okay, and then when she talks about, like, her internal feelings, right? I want to be where the people are. I want to see them singing and dancing. That's literally her theme, which is again built off of her own voice.
Right.
So this song is literally just combining Ariel and Eric's theme. They haven't met each other yet, and they are already like a perfect musical match for each other. Um, like I said, they're both going up a fourth, spanning a fourth. We have Ariel going up, Eric kind of falling back down. We're such great musical complements of each other. Yeah, basically the song's just combining these things, and one after the other. And in the climax, what's the line of the climax? I should remember the line of the climax, but like, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I know something right now. One day I'll be part of your world. That I think that's roughly the line. There, we literally are kind of combining the musical elements of both of their themes. They're kind of it's hard to describe exactly what they're doing, what Alan Menken is doing, but he's kind of taking like the general musical shape of both of those things and kind of putting them together. So the climax are like literally both themes kind of living with each other and like building off of each other, which to me that is just fantastic. So we haven't even, the two characters haven't even met each other. We already know musically that they are a perfect match for each other.
Right.
Lyrically, thematically, it just makes it so much more complete. You can say that it's not like the most believable, authentic romance out there, which is probably true, but I mean, the music is doing its best to help you believe in it.
Yeah,
it's some kind of like fate, which is it's so cool to me.
It's almost as if he's like her yearning for something more. She may see it in that moment as like venturing out onto the land, but the music is telling us that more is like a person that she fits with, essentially.
Yeah, right. She doesn't know, but she wants to like marry a human. She just wants to like go up to the land.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's then she sings it again, like a abbreviated version, right after she saves Eric too, and it's just fantastic. So that's something that's so unique. It's not just like we're transforming it where now the interval is a major sixth and now it's a minor sixth. Like we're literally combining themes together and kind of turning into something beyond both of them, which it's just so good. I don't have any higher praise I can give it. Like I don't know. Is that what like marriage is supposed to be? Love is supposed to be?
Yeah.
Such a like unique and ingenious musical use of these themes. That is the highlight of use of themes. Like I said, there are lots of other great small themes to like listen to and investigate, but my goodness, like what else in film compares to that?
Do you find that nowadays more concerning like the little tiny themes, like themes for objects and things like that those have somewhat vanished?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
go
ahead.
I think people think they're just too obvious.
I don't understand that. I feel like you've come to that sort of description of what's happening in people's minds when they compose, where like they feel like something's too obvious, which makes it too childish, and I don't really get that. Like, I feel like there are equivalents to that visually, like somewhat, but you still do it. It just depends on the context,
See, I think generally, and I got into this a little bit when we were talking about the golden age 2 weeks ago. Film composers that I talk to and read stuff from, they tend to feel like they need to break the rules because the rules are too obvious. Like they don't like Mickey Mousing, which is like literally following the action, like, oh, an arrow hits somebody and like the second the arrow hits somebody, bang, and like that kind of stuff. Or like, oh, we're like Tom and Jerry, and like, oh, when his little mouse is like running around, again, it has like little, like stirring footprint sound, so that's called Mickey Mousing.
Right.
People do not like that anymore because I think it's just too obvious, and it insults the viewer's intelligence. A lot of early composers would totally disagree with you. Max Steiner very much disagreed with that. He is the king of Mickey Mousing. I mean, not everyone did it. Korngold was not so into it, but to do it now, people think it insults your intelligence. Or if you're gonna have like the theme for, I don't know, Harry Potter's wand. Well, we do get sort of some of that stuff from John Williams, like the Nimbus 2000, like this, the broom Harry has, like it gets its own theme.
Right. Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite sad because I feel like it's part of the whole thing that's happened in maybe art as a whole. I don't know. I'm not familiar with all aspects of current art culture, but especially in like the film, TV sort of space where it's like you need to deconstruct, things so that you can be free. And it's like, well, first you need to know how to like construct something that's like sound before you can like, start to play with the little parts, That's how the best filmmakers experiment the best, is because they understand the rules very intimately and they know how to break them, properly,
Mm.
And I feel like film is such a multidisciplinary art form that, I mean, if everyone's taking this attitude towards the film, you get like right before we got this era of films where I think the Marvel era can be split into two parts. There's Marvel and everyone else, and then there's Marvel Monopoly. So like in the Marvel and everyone else era, the everyone else was were too busy making mediocre films that were quote unquote different, and really a lot of these films are characters that have no character, scripts that are essentially 3-act screenplays anyway, but they thought they were breaking away, but they just made a really crappy attempt at a 3-act screenplay. And I feel like that's really sad because it's like, you really do have to you have to know your rule of thirds, you have to know your 180-degree rule, both of which are basically, once you understand them so intimately, basically become irrelevant to you, but you get to understand why they're quote unquote rules to begin with, and then you can deconstruct, although I don't think that's really what you're doing, but if you want to put it that way, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder how much that also comes from like pressure from the directors, like the directors saying, well, it's too obvious if you do that.
Yeah. I can definitely imagine some directors saying, oh, I just want my film to be unique, so do it differently, or like,
right.
or like, oh, don't you think it would be cool if it was more atmospheric or something like that,
Or hey, let's just give you the temp track that every other film is using, like the Hans Zimmer, the Thin Red Line.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can't imagine their films outside of those contexts. Yeah.
Which, oh man, not entirely related to what we've been talking about, but like related to that this phenomenon of like copying, but trying to sound unique. One of the things I hated about 1917. It's a good film. I enjoyed it. The music is so good, especially in certain parts. There's some really fantastic stuff. It's a very unique score, like a very unique kind of war movie score. And then the last scene, it's literally the Thin Red Line. I mean, I think it's the same key. It's just like slightly slower. I mean, or maybe it's like a half step up. I don't know. I don't remember who the director, Menendez or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Is. It's like you can do whatever you want, but when we get to the climax here of the film, the last scene, you're gonna throw Thin Red Line right in there, and you're gonna sound like it as much as you can. Way to kill a otherwise good, unique score.
Yeah, It actually surprises me that Thin Red Line is the score that people use, like, because in the actual, like, that's a Malick film, and
Yes.
in the actual film, the score is so, like, particular to that film that I can't understand why anyone would, desire, well, unless they're really picking out, like, just, like, a few pieces, and they're just sticking that onto everything. But, like, I can't, it's just, like, that score to me feels like it belongs to that film. Like, I couldn't separate them, and I think that's the best work by far that Zimmer has done. At least that I've heard. On a film, most developed score, I think.
Prince of Egypt is good too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Prince of Egypt.
And The Lion King.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too. Yeah, I forgot about his animated film stuff.
Yeah, like that era though, like 95, 96, 97.
Yeah. Yeah, but like it's just weird to me that people will pick that movie to like, or that score to stick everywhere. It's kind of weird, but okay.
Yeah.